it needs to be said. I can relate to that young lady, and I felt for her. Mm-hmm. I know what it's like to be hated. I know what it's like to be a black woman and hated because of my color.
Yeah. Caitlin's game that night against Phoenix Mercury player Alyssa Thomas lodged her fist into Caitlin's neck in a play where no foul was called during the game.
What would happen if one of the greatest basketball icons of all time saw the WNBA's most promising young player being singled out for unfair treatment on a regular basis? That's precisely what you're about to learn, because the basketball world has been rocked by Cheryl Miller's shocking comments regarding Alyssa Thomas's behavior against Caitlin Clark. But first, think about this. Have you ever seen a professional athlete subjected to the kind of mistreatment that Caitlin Clark has seen during her career? Cheryl Miller's perspective on the WNBA was drastically altered by what she saw during the Phoenix Mercury game. Alyssa Thomas, in her opinion, is greatly impacted by Miller's criticism, and Caitlin Clark is now in a predicament that Cheryl Miller is all too familiar with. Miller dominated a league full of excellent players from 1982 to 1986, and opponents frequently attempted to physically frighten her since they couldn't match her extraordinary basketball intelligence. Cheryl Miller did, however, make one very apparent point. The conversation about Alyssa Thomas becomes particularly interesting at this point. Miller understands the distinction between fierce competition at the championship level and what she thinks she saw with Clark. "It was the most cowardly act I've seen on a basketball court in decades," she said. "You heard properly."
To be something involving this girl, and there's an elevated level of physicality that obviously compromised her availability last season where she missed a few games. There is a palpable resentment towards this girl, where you have people who are resenting of her star power and her cachet, and as a result, if they have an opportunity to go at her, they're going to take it. Now, Caitlin Clark is no innocent body.
Cheryl Miller had an instant and strong reaction when she saw the footage of Alyssa Thomas pushing Caitlin Clark from behind when Clark was still coping with getting poked in the eye. Having faced some of the most formidable opponents during her illustrious career, Cheryl Miller, one of the best competitors in basketball history, understands exactly what true competitive spirit looks like. Nevertheless, she felt that Alyssa Thomas's behavior went beyond the bounds of competitive honesty and sportsmanship. The timing of the shove, however, caught Cheryl Miller's attention the most. The conversation indicates that Alyssa Thomas has been subjected to harsh criticism as a result of her understanding. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like the video before we continue. Let's return to the narrative now. Cheryl Miller tackled a topic that many fans had already been considering but that few prominent people had been willing to discuss in public. She contended that playing aggressive, championship-level defense is quite different from taking a cheap shot at a player who was exposed and not anticipating contact. Miller clarified that she played during one of the most physically demanding periods in the history of women's basketball. Instead of waiting until an opponent was helpless, you would face them head-on if you had a problem with them back then. Instead of approaching them from behind, you confront them directly. Miller said that's precisely what made Alyssa Thomas's behavior so intolerable. Many people think that since making those comments, Cheryl Miller's criticism has seriously harmed Alyssa Thomas's reputation. The basketball great was even more irritated by Thomas's post-event response. Instead of acknowledging that she might have gone too far or apologizing, Thomas claimed that fans and the media were unfairly criticizing her. "I will be damned if I do. Damned if I do," she said. Miller's opinion was only reinforced after hearing such remarks. The greatest basketball champions have always taken responsibility for their actions, especially when it comes to the safety of another player, she said. Miller stated that when sportsmen avoid taking responsibility and instead present themselves as victims, it reminds her of rivals who realize they can't compete with elite basketball players by using dubious strategies to sway the game. That strategy, in her opinion, shows that competence alone is insufficient to compete at the highest level. Miller also commended Caitlin Clark for having many of the traits that characterize players who are truly excellent. She cited Clark's tremendous court vision that uplifts everyone around her, her outstanding basketball IQ, and her incredible ability to deliver in crucial situations. Miller, however, also voiced concern that such a talented young player must spend so much time shielding herself from needless physical play rather than concentrating solely on honing her exceptional talent because she really appreciates the sport's purity. Miller claims that Alyssa Thomas's strategy embodies everything that is wrong with players who decide to focus on Clark instead of honing their own skills by diligence, planning, and commitment. The fact that Clark had a physical disability when she was in such a precarious situation really disturbed her. According to Miller, that kind of behavior is among the worst sportsmanship she has seen in basketball. Her remarks immediately became one of the most talked about topics in the basketball community, which was not surprising. Miller also drew comparisons between Clark's circumstances and some of her own professional encounters with physical play. She also stressed that Clark's situation is special since, at just 22 years old, she is under strain that very few athletes ever encounter while also acting as the unchallenged face of women's basketball. One of Miller's most powerful remarks, which is currently making the rounds on social media, was on the league's future. She contended that the WNBA sends the incorrect message by implying that mediocre players may remain relevant through dubious methods rather than honing their basketball skills if it permits players to target its greatest stars without facing significant repercussions. That, in her perspective, establishes a risky standard that can deter the players who are contributing to the league's advancement. Miller also cautioned that young fans watching at home might get the wrong lesson if these acts were not appropriately disciplined. She thinks the WNBA should encourage skill, commitment, respect, and sportsmanship rather than teaching kids to love cheap shots or dubious behavior. Miller's belief in Clark's future was perhaps the most significant aspect of her remarks. Every cheap shot, dubious play, and attempt to frighten Clark, she insisted, would only make her more determined to establish herself with skill and performance. Miller noted one significant distinction between Clark's experience and her own freshman season, when opponents continuously put her to the test physically. Clark is juggling all of that with the expectations that come with being the most marketable player in WNBA history as well as the unparalleled media attention. Miller thinks it's crucial to support Clark because of this. According to her, she is protecting the integrity of basketball itself rather than just a gifted athlete. According to Miller, Caitlin Clark embodies the qualities, talent, vision, competition, class, and leadership that make the sport unique. However, she feels that players who use dubious strategies are the antithesis of what basketball ought to be. The Hall of Famer stated unequivocally that the WNBA had reached a turning point. She says the league has two options. It has two options. Either it keeps letting players use dubious tactics to stay relevant, or it protects and elevates its best players, allowing guys like Clark to reach their full potential and contribute to the league's further expansion. Miller's message was really obvious. She thinks the path the WNBA takes will determine its destiny. That is now the main point of contention among fans. Will Lee heed Cheryl Miller's advice to better safeguard Caitlin Clark, or will it keep letting players like Alyssa Thomas influence public opinion? Leave a comment below with your opinions. How do you feel about Alyssa Thomas being criticized by Cheryl Miller? Do you think her worries were warranted, or do you think she was too harsh? More significantly, do you believe the WNBA will eventually take more aggressive action to safeguard its biggest star? Please feel free to express your opinions in the comments section below. Every remark that is submitted is read by me. Remember to subscribe to the channel and enable notifications if you like basketball analysis that delves deeper than the headlines and examines what's actually occurring in the game. Discussions on Caitlin Clark and her status in the WNBA may be permanently impacted by Cheryl Miller's divisive comments. People in the basketball community are keeping a careful eye on how this story plays out. The issue is no longer about a single game, a single heartfelt foul, or a single contentious episode, as the conversation has grown. Rather, it has developed into a broader discussion about women's basketball's future, the standards the league hopes to maintain, and how its top players are handled in the public eye. Few athletes have ever faced the kind of expectations that Caitlin Clark carried long before she joined the WNBA. Every time she enters the stage, millions of people watch. Every choice she takes is examined from every perspective. Every achievement is honored, and every failure makes headlines across the country. Being one of the most well-known names in the basketball world today means that. Meanwhile, seasoned veterans from all throughout the league are still competing at the top level, bringing years of commitment, tenacity, and pride to each game. In addition to encouraging intense competition, the WNBA wants to make sure that physical basketball never crosses the line into needless or risky play. Fans are looking for intensity. They desire rivalries. They desire real competition. They also demand consistency, justice, and respect. Cheryl Miller's remarks have generated a lot of conversation since she knows what it's like to perform under extreme pressure. She faced some of the toughest players women's basketball has ever produced during her illustrious career. However, her message was never only about being harsh. It was about preserving the sport's integrity and ensuring that basketball skill, not controversy, continues to be the main focus. Whether individuals fully agree with Cheryl Miller or think the problem has been overstated, there is no doubting that her comments have sparked a lot of discussion. The same questions are still posed by fans, analysts, former players, and members of the media. When the biggest players in the league are the targets of particularly violent play, what should happen? Should authorities impose stricter enforcement of the regulations? Is this just a feature of professional basketball, or should the league impose harsher penalties? Views are still divergent. But Caitlin Clark's response is one thing that hasn't changed. Instead than letting controversy, physical defense, or outside criticism define her career, she has decided to stay focused on basketball. She keeps competing, showing up, and proving why so many people think she's the sport's future. One of the main reasons her admirers still support her is because of her tenacity. In the meantime, the WNBA is receiving more attention than it has ever received. Social media conversations are growing daily, venues are packed with fans, television audiences are still expanding, and countless new viewers are learning about women's basketball for the first time. These kinds of incidents have an impact on far more than just a single player or team. They also influence how the league is seen globally. Every game will become significantly more important as the season progresses. Every appearance that Caitlin Clark makes will be closely watched. Every contentious play will be repeatedly shown. Every officiating choice will be discussed. Every game will turn into a new chapter in one of the WNBA's most anticipated seasons ever. The topic of discussion now shifts to you. Do you believe Cheryl Miller's remarks accurately capture the league's present situation? Do you think the WNBA is taking adequate precautions to keep its athletes safe while still permitting physical basketball competition? What effect do you believe the whole thing will have on Alyssa Thomas, Caitlin Clark, and the league's future? Leave a comment below with your thoughts. I sincerely want to hear the opinions of basketball enthusiasts worldwide. Respectful discourse is what makes this community unique, and your viewpoint might even be included in a future video. Make sure you subscribe, enable notifications, and never miss another upload if you like this kind of basketball coverage and want more in-depth analysis, exclusive updates, and the biggest news surrounding the WNBA, NBA legends, and Caitlin Clark. I appreciate your unwavering support. We appreciate you watching, and keep in mind that each game adds a new chapter to the history of basketball. Perhaps this chapter is not as significant as the next. Let us know what you think in the comments, subscribe, enable all notifications, and we'll see you in the next video.